Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to give my review of WCW Spring Stampede 1997. Starting off the evening, we're going to go to our first match of the night. It is Ultimo Dragon versus Rey Mysterio. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between the Dragon and Mysterio, with the Dragon landing a kick combination on Mysterio. Dragon then was keeping the pace of the match, with Dragon hitting a running Liger bomb on Mysterio. Mysterio then gets up, hits a springboard senton to the outside on the Dragon. Mysterio then hits a springboard leg drop as well. Dragon then gets up, hits a enziguri on Mysterio. But Mysterio ultimately hits a springboard Hurricane Rana, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Rey Mysterio Jr. Hats off to Rey Mysterio Jr. for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WCW Women's Championship. It is Akira Hakuto versus Medusa. I thought this was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between Hakuto and Medusa, with Medusa keeping the pace of the match. Sonny Ono was sitting ringside. He ends up attacking Medusa. Medusa then attacks Sonny Ono as well. Luna Vachon makes her way out to the ring to attack Medusa. Hakuto capitalizes on this, goes for the cover, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Akira Hakuto. Hats off to Akira Hakuto for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WCW Television Championship. It is Prince Iaukea versus Steven Regal. I thought this was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Iaukea and Regal. Regal was keeping the pace, with Regal landing multiple European uppercuts on Iaukea. But Iaukea ultimately hits a roll-up on Steven Regal. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Prince Iaukea. Hats off to Prince Iaukea for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a tag team matchup. It is Public Enemy versus Jeff Jarrett and Steve McMichael. I thought this was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Public Enemy keeping the pace of the match. Jarrett then applies a figure 4 leg lock. Rock then grabs a briefcase. Rocco then hits Jarrett with the briefcase. And then Johnny Gunge goes for the cover, pins for the 3. And your winners of the match are Public Enemy. Hats off to Public Enemy for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WCW United States Championship. It is Dean Malenko versus Chris Benoit. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Malenko and Benoit, with Malenko keeping the pace of the match. Jacqueline makes her way out to the ring, attacks Woman that was sitting ringside, or standing ringside. Benoit then hits a diving headbutt. Jimmy Hart then is here. Jimmy then takes the belt. Eddie Guerrero is also here as well. Eddie then stops Jimmy Hart. Arn Anderson is here as well. Kevin Sullivan then attacks Benoit, and this match ultimately ends in a no contest. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WCW Tag Team Championships. It is Kevin Nash versus Rick Steiner. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Nash and Steiner, with Nash keeping the pace of the match. Nash then hits a jackknife powerbomb on Rick Steiner. Six then attacks Rick. Nash then sends Rick into the exposed turnbuckle. Nash then hits another jackknife powerbomb on Rick Steiner. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Kevin Nash. Hats off to Kevin Nash for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Lex Luger and the Giant versus Harlem Heat. I thought this was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Lex and the Giant keeping the pace of the match. Lex ultimately applies a torture rack on Stevie Ray. And your winners of the match are Lex Luger and the Giant. Hats off to Lex Luger and the Giant for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of WCW Spring Stampede 1997. It is Diamond Dallas Page versus Randy Savage. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between DDP and Savage, with Savage keeping the pace of the match. Randy then attacks the ref. Savage then hits an elbow drop off the top rope. Referee Nick Patrick is here. DDP then ultimately hits his signature diamond cutter on Randy Savage. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Diamond Dallas Page. Hats off to Diamond Dallas Page for getting the win in this matchup. A couple things I'm going to say about Spring Stampede 1997 before I get out of here, man. Number one, this was a solid event from top to bottom. A couple matches on here that I really liked was Ultimo Dragon versus Rey Mysterio. I thought that was a great opening match to start this event. And honestly, I've reiterated this multiple times, I think the Cruiserweight division was severely underrated for WCW. And to have the likes of Ultimo Dragon and Rey Mysterio in a match on this card, man, was absolutely fantastic. Hakuto versus Medusa, it was a solid matchup, but in my defense, WCW and Eric Bischoff really didn't do much with a women's division for WCW. And a lot of the matches that Medusa had in WCW were against Akira Hakuto. So, I mean, we're kind of really getting the same thing between Medusa and Hakuto multiple times in a row for the women's championship. So, WCW really didn't have a women's roster at that time. A couple other matches that I really enjoyed. Number one was Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit. Again, you know, hats off to the Cruiserweight division. This match was for the United States Championship. It was a solid matchup, and two of the best to ever do it, in my honest opinion, with Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit. The other match, obviously, that I liked on here as well was the main event, DDP versus Randy Savage. This was a great storyline between DDP and Randy Savage that involved Kimberly Page as well as Miss Elizabeth. It was just a great story between DDP and Randy Savage, and it made for a great match in the main event for Spring Stampede 1997. But just like I do with every single one of these pay-per-views, you guys know by now, I always give these pay-per-views a rating from 1 out of 10. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. I'm going to have to give Spring Stampede 1997 a solid rating of a 5 at best, man. But this is my review of WCW's Spring Stampede 1997. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.